if you strike a safety match in a dark room,
Hmm.
you get that instant violent flare.
Oh, yeah.
It's sharp, it's hot, and it smells entirely like danger.
Totally.
Now, take your hand away from that match and just, press 2 fingers to your neck, feel that pulse.
Right.
It's steady, it's highly regulated, it is quite literally the rhythm of life. And what is completely wild to consider is that the exact same chemical element driving that explosive fire in the match, it is the exact same element powering the cellular machinery that lets your heart beat.
It's the ultimate chemical paradox. You're looking at something that is fundamentally destructive and at the exact same time completely indispensable. You just can't have one without the other.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking element 15, which is phosphorus.
Yes, we are.
We're basing this on a really comprehensive research document we have today titled phosphorus.pdf. And the mission for this deep dive is to explore what biologists categorize as a tier 1 essential element.
Meaning, life as we know it simply does not exist without it.
Right. We're going to figure out how the exact same substance that violently bursts into flames and fuels weaponry is the indispensable spark of life keeping you alive right now. Okay, let's unpack this. Element 15. Where does it actually fit into the grand scheme of things?
Well, to set the tone here, I think it helps to contrast it with the other major building blocks of life. So think about nitrogen.
Okay, nitrogen.
Nitrogen is the calm regulator of biology. It's incredibly stable, makes up most of the air we breathe. It just kind of hums along in the background.
Doing its job.
Right. Phosphorus, on the other hand, is like the alchemist of the periodic table.
The alchemist. I like that.
Yeah, because it operates in the shadows. It is deeply transformative, and honestly, it is inherently dangerous. It is a life giver, absolutely, but a highly, highly unstable one.
And before we can even look at how this alchemist operates safely inside your cells, we have to look at where it comes from. Because it doesn't just spontaneously generate here on Earth.
Oh, not even close. When you look at the cosmic recipe for life, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, those elements are relatively abundant across the universe.
Right.
But phosphorus is cosmically rare. It wasn't forged in the Big Bang. It's what astrophysicists call a late stellar element.
Meaning it takes an immense amount of cosmic violence just to create a single atom of it.
Exactly.
Like finding a rare, incredibly volatile spice hidden away in the back of the universe's pantry. To make element 15, you need a massive dying star to literally collapse in on itself and go supernova.
Yeah, that is the only event that generates enough heat and pressure to smash lighter atoms together, fuse them into phosphorus, and then blast them across the vacuum of space.
So if you're listening to this, quite literally every single atom of phosphorus currently sitting inside your teeth was forged in the fiery death of a star.
It is wild to think about. It rode through space on interstellar dust and meteorites for, millions of years before eventually settling into the rocky crust of early Earth. But the thing you have to understand is that when it finally got here, it brought a deeply unstable personality with it.
Which is something I really want to dig into because, honestly, it's hard to wrap my head around. The text says element 15 exists in these radically different forms, or allotropes.
Yes, allotropes.
But wait, if it's all just pure phosphorus-like, all the exact same atomic building blocks, how different can one single element be? How does it know to either spontaneously combust or, as we'll see later, act like a stable piece of futuristic tech?
It all comes down to architecture.
Okay, architecture.
Yeah, think of it this way. You can take a pile of steel beams and just lean them against each other haphazardly.
Right, which isn't very safe.
Exactly. That structure is unstable. The slightest breeze will knock it over. But if you take those exact same steel beams and weld them into a reinforced grid, they can hold up a skyscraper.
Ah, so the material is identical, but the geometric arrangement dictates exactly how it behaves.
You nailed it. And phosphorus basically has 3 main architectural phases, the most infamous of which is white phosphorus.
Which, according to the source, is waxy, pale, and famously glows in the dark.
Yes.
The name itself actually translates to lightbringer, right? But that glow isn't magic, it's a warning sign.
It is a massive warning sign. That glow is material literally degrading as it reacts with ambient oxygen. In white phosphorus, the atoms are arranged in these tight, discrete little pyramids of 4.
Okay, pyramids.
And geometrically, the angles are incredibly forced. The atoms are packed so awkwardly that the chemical bonds are basically screaming under the tension.
Oh, like bending a thick piece of plastic until it's just about to snap.
That's a perfect analogy. They are desperate to break apart and react with anything nearby. That tension makes white phosphorus incredibly toxic and so unstable that if it reaches about 44 degrees Celsius...
Which is just a little above your normal body temperature, right?
Exactly. At that temperature, the thermal energy is enough to snap those bonds, and it self-ignites in the open air, just bursts into flames.
Yeah. That is terrifying. So that's our haphazard pile of steel beams. But then, if we change the architecture, we get red phosphorus.
Right. Now, if you take that white phosphorus and heat it up in a sealed environment without oxygen, those tense little pyramids pop open and they link up into long, complex chains.
Relieving the tension.
Instantly. It relieves the internal pressure. Suddenly, you're left with this dark red powder. It's much more stable. I mean, it won't spontaneously combust on your desk, but it still holds a significant amount of stored energy.
Which is why we've tamed it to use in safety matches. You strike it, add a little friction, and that stored energy releases as fire.
Exactly.
But then there's the third phase, which is where things get really weird in the text. Black phosphorus.
Yeah, black phosphorus. What's fascinating here is that if you subject phosphorus to extreme pressure, you can force those atoms into corrugated layered sheets.
Like sheets stacked on top of each other.
Right. It forms this beautiful hexagonal lattice that looks almost metallic.
And it completely changes the physical properties. I mean, it becomes highly stable, and it can actually conduct electricity.
It's incredible. The electrons can just flow right across those smooth sheets.
So we go from a glowing, self-igniting poison to a match head to a highly stable semiconductor, all the exact same element.
All element 15.
But that brings us to the core mystery of this whole deep dive. If this element is so volatile and so prone to catching fire, how on earth does it safely operate the machinery inside your cells?
Well, it has to be tamed. Phosphorus almost never exists totally on its own in nature because it is just too reactive.
It wants a partner.
It desperately wants a partner to stabilize it, and its absolute favorite partner is oxygen.
Okay.
When one phosphorus atom binds tightly with 4 oxygen atoms, it forms what biologists call a phosphate group. And that specific geometric group is the master key to all biological life.
Because it's the foundational blueprint. I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably already know your DNA holds the genetic code that makes you, you. But the phosphate group's role isn't the information itself, right? It's the physical hardware.
Yes, exactly. Think of the genetic code as the steps of a spiral staircase. But what actually holds those steps together?
The handrails.
The handrails. What stops the whole structure from collapsing into a puddle of organic soup? Those handrails are made of alternating sugar and phosphate groups. The incredibly strong bonds of the phosphate group preserve the structural integrity of your genetic memory.
So without element 15, the staircase just falls apart.
Completely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it's not just sitting there acting as structural scaffolding. It is the engine of life itself.
Oh, absolutely.
To turn the food you eat into physical action, your cells use a molecule called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. We always hear ATP called the energy currency of the cell. But what actually gives that currency its value? It's the P at the end, right? The triphosphate.
Precisely. You have this molecule with a tail made of 3 phosphate groups. Now, phosphate groups are negatively charged, and just like trying to push the negative ends of 2 magnets together, they fiercely repel each other. But in ATP, the chemical bonds are literally forcing 3 of these negative groups to sit right next to each other.
Oh, wow. So it's like taking 3 heavy-duty metal springs, compressing them down, and shoving them into a tiny tube?
Yes.
There is a massive amount of physical tension waiting to be unleashed.
So much tension.
And when your cell needs to fire a neuron or twitch a muscle fiber, it just snaps off that 3rd phosphate spring.
I do have to add a slight nuance there, though, based on the research.
Sure, go for it.
We often say the energy comes from breaking the bond, but it's more accurate to say that once that bond is broken, the remaining molecule and the freed phosphate snap into a much lower, more stable state of tension.
Oh, I see.
It's the biological system relaxing into a more comfortable geometry. And that relaxation is what releases the actual bung to power.
That makes so much sense. It's like the sigh of relief from the molecule that actually powers the muscle movement. So food becomes action because phosphorus is willing to hold that immense tension and then just let it go.
Right.
And speaking of physical action, it also does the exact same structural job on a macro scale in our bodies, doesn't it? It's what turns soft, squishy tissue into rigid architecture.
You're talking about hydroxyapatite.
Exactly. Calcium phosphate minerals are what literally crystallize to form the hard matrix of our bones and our teeth. It's the rebar in the concrete of the human
It
skeleton.
really is.
But all of this biological brilliance brings up a massive logistical problem.
It does.
If humans and plants and animals absolutely require element 15 to survive, I mean, if it's the backbone of our DNA, the energy of our cells, and the structure of our bones, where do we get it? Because unlike nitrogen, we can't just breathe it in out of thin air.
No, we really can't. And this is the great geological bottleneck of Earth. Phosphorus has no gaseous phase under normal conditions. It doesn't just float around in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It is stubbornly trapped inside rocks, specifically ancient minerals like apatite and phosphorite.
Right. Which is so weird to think of. If you're listening to this and wondering, wait, if it's permanently trapped in a rock, how does it ever get into the soil so a plant can eat it? Like, how does it get into my salad?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the answer is, it happens agonizingly slowly.
Like, how slow?
Picture a rock face exposed to the elements. Over hundreds or even thousands of years, slightly acidic rainwater washes over that rock. It dissolves microscopic amounts of phosphate, which trickle into the soil.
Okay, a tiny trickle.
Right. Then a plant's roots absorb it. An animal eats the plant, the animal dies, microbes decompose the body, and the phosphorus either slowly returns to the local soil or eventually washes into the ocean.
Where it just sits.
It settles on the seafloor and over millions of years gets compressed back into rock. The cycle starts all over again.
So it is a deeply constrained, closed-loop cycle.
Very deeply constrained.
For thousands of years, human civilization had to operate at the exact speed of that slow drip. To grow food, we had to scavenge and recycle every scrap of loose phosphorus we could find.
People use compost, manure, ground-up bones.
And massive amounts of guano, right,
Yeah.
bird and bat droppings. But as the human population exploded into the billions, we couldn't wait for rainwater to slowly melt rocks anymore.
Right. A population of 8 billion people requires a fire hose of nutrients, not a slow drip. To build the modern world, we had to artificially accelerate the cycle. We had to start mining it out of the ground directly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, modern society is completely propped up by phosphate rock mining.
Completely.
This is the hidden, non-renewable pillar of human civilization. Without mine fertilizer, global high-yield agriculture would instantly collapse. We simply wouldn't have enough food.
And what's really important to impartially note here is that this geological lottery isn't evenly distributed across the globe.
Right, the deposits are very localized.
Extremely localized. The vast majority of the world's mineable phosphate rock is concentrated in just a few locations. Morocco and the Western Sahara hold incredibly massive reserves. And then you also have significant deposits in China, the United States, Russia, and Jordan.
Think about what that actually means. Every single nation on Earth requires this mined rock to feed their citizens. But only a handful of places actually have it in the ground.
Right.
We have artificially inflated the carrying capacity of the planet by digging up millions of years of stored geological phosphorus and basically dumping it onto our farm fields in a concentrated rush.
Which logically leads us to the unintended consequence of moving that much material that quickly. We've solved the bottleneck of human hunger, sure, but by flooding a delicate, incredibly slow-moving biological cycle with millions of tons of concentrated nutrients.
We've triggered a severe environmental crisis.
Exactly.
Because plants are only so hungry, right? When farmers apply massive amounts of synthetic phosphate fertilizer to a field, the crops physically cannot absorb all of it before the rain comes. So what happens to all those leftover millions of tons of element 15?
It just washes away. The runoff flows into local streams, rivers, lakes, and eventually the ocean. And that triggers a process called eutrophication.
Eutrophication.
Right. Remember, phosphorus is the ultimate growth nutrient. So when it suddenly floods an aquatic ecosystem, the algae in that water suddenly have an unlimited food supply.
Oh, man.
They experience a massive, unnatural population explosion, creating thick algal blooms that cover the surface of the water, basically blocking out the sunlight.
But the real devastation happens when that algae dies, right? That's what the research points out.
Exactly. The algae bloom, and then they die off en masse. And as they sink, billions of bacteria begin to feast on the dead organic matter. And the decomposition process requires oxygen.
Right, the bacteria are breathing.
Yes. They breathe so rapidly that they consume all the dissolved oxygen in the surrounding water,
They literally suck the breath out of the lake.
resulting in what we call dead zones.
Yeah,
Massive fish kills. Entire aquatic ecosystems just suffocate.
that is, it's a profound irony. The very nutrient that was synthesized to sustain life on land becomes a suffocating force in the water.
It really is. It is fertility turned toxic simply because the cycle is out of balance.
And that's just the ecological fallout from the runoff at the end of the line. The extraction process itself at the beginning of the line is pretty brutal, too.
Oh, definitely.
The source material details severe habitat destruction, water contamination from massive waste piles, and even radioactive byproducts.
That's a really crucial point. Phosphate rock in the ground naturally sits alongside trace amounts of heavy metals, like uranium and radium.
Wow, okay.
So when you chemically process millions of tons of phosphate rock into fertilizer, those radioactive trace elements get concentrated into the waste byproducts, which then have to be stored and managed incredibly carefully.
So what does this all mean? We are faced with an incredible ethical and practical dilemma. How do we feed billions of people without destroying the water systems that are equally essential to our survival?
That is the defining dilemma of element 15 in the modern age.
Because it's absolute friction between two biological necessities. We need the rock to grow the food, but extracting and applying the rock is suffocating the water.
Right. We are taking a finite, slowly renewing resource from the ground, passing it briefly through our food system, and then losing it to the oceans where it causes massive damage. It's a broken loop.
So humanity is basically facing a wall here. We have a finite, polluting resource that we absolutely cannot live without. To survive, we have to look toward technological innovation.
We do.
And interestingly enough, phosphorus isn't just the problem, it's also proving to be a highly versatile tool in our technology. Let's revisit that black phosphorus we talked about earlier.
Right, the corrugated metallic-looking sheets. So phosphorus is actually highly prized in the electronics world, specifically for doping silicon to create semiconductors.
Okay, I hear the term doping all the time with computer chips,
Yeah.
but why do we inject element 15 into silicon? What is the actual mechanism that makes it a semiconductor?
It's brilliantly simple chemistry, really.
Mm.
A pure silicon crystal is highly stable. Every silicon atom has 4 valence electrons, and they bond perfectly with 4 neighbors.
So everyone's holding hands, no one is loose.
Exactly. There are no free electrons to carry an electrical current. It acts as an insulator. But phosphorus has 5 valence electrons.
Ah.
So if you inject or dope a small amount of phosphorus into that silicon lattice, 4 of its electrons bond with the silicon, but that 5th electron is left completely free to roam.
It's just an extra unattached electron wandering around the structure.
Exactly. And a flowing free electron is an electrical current. By adding phosphorus, you create an N-type, or negative type semiconductor.
Wow.
It's the absolute foundation of modern computing, LEDs, and solar cells. Researchers are even using pure black phosphorus now to develop advanced batteries because its layered structure can actually trap and hold lithium ions beautifully.
That is so cool. This raises an important question, though. Can we use our mastery of technology not just to build faster computer chips, but to solve the existential threat of the broken agricultural cycle? Like, how do we fix the fertilizer runoff?
Well, that's the frontier of agricultural tech right now. First, there's precision agriculture.
Oh.
Instead of just spraying millions of tons of phosphorus across a field blindly, farmers are increasingly using AI mapping, drones, and soil sensors to apply the exact microdose of fertilizer precisely to a plant's roots.
Oh, I see. They only give the plant exactly what it can eat.
Right, meaning zero runoff.
But what about the phosphorus that does get away? Or, the phosphorus that ends up in human waste?
That's the second frontier, sustainable recovery. Engineers are designing wastewater treatment plants that use targeted chemical extraction to pull dissolved phosphates straight out of the sewage.
Wait, really?
Yeah, we can literally precipitate the phosphorus out of the drain water, turn it into solid fertilizer pellets, and send it right back to the farm.
Closing the loop before it ever hits the rivers.
Exactly.
We essentially have to become the alchemists ourselves. We have to learn to master the cycle before we run out of concentrated, mineable rock deposits.
Which brings us to the philosophical weight of all this. I mean, phosphorus is the ultimate symbol of stored energy, of biological memory, and of continuity.
Yeah.
But above all, the modern era of phosphorus represents the immense danger of broken cycles. We didn't just discover this element, We began mining our own future from ancient deposits just to fuel the present.
It is an incredible journey when you step back and look at it. To wrap up this deep dive, just think about the path we've traced today. Phosphorus started in the fiery, violent death of a supernova explosion.
Right.
It drifted across the cosmos on space dust to sit in the Earth. It is the eerie, glowing white poison that snaps its tense bonds to spontaneously ignite.
Yeah.
It is the solid, crystalline integrity of your own teeth. It's the coiled spring of cellular energy that relaxes to let you take a single breath. And it is the precarious, finite rock upon which the entire foundation of global human agriculture rests.
It is the element of inner fire. And its story is a strict reminder that human civilization depends not just on energy or machines or intelligence, but on basic chemical nutrients moving in proper, sustainable balance through living systems.
Think back to the very beginning of our conversation, to striking that match and feeling your pulse, the destructive fire and the steady rhythm of life. It's all element 15.
It really is.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the reality of our reliance on these finite systems. If the current size of the human population is almost entirely propped up by a non-renewable rock dug from a handful of countries, what happens to human evolution when that rock finally runs out? Are we just a temporary, artificially inflated spike in Earth's history, fueled entirely by borrowed stardust?
It is a profoundly sobering question, and one that definitely forces us to look much more closely at the invisible systems keeping us all alive.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the hidden systems and the hidden elements that sustain our world.